Welcome to another edition of Captain's Compass. This is Steven Johnson. I'm one of the data community advocates here at Shipyard. In today's edition, we wanted to talk about Snowpark. Snowpark, if you don't know what it is, it's basically the ability to be able to run Python, Java, and Scala code inside of Snowflake. This was a big ad for Snowflake that happens last year that opened up the door for more developers to get inside of Snowflake. They kind of extended past just using SQL, which is obviously a big deal. And so, including with that, I just wanted to kind of hit on kind of the key facets of why Snowpark is good and like why you should think about using it. And then I'm going to talk about how it kind of compares with Shipyard and kind of the differences and how they can work together as well. So one reason why Snowpark is great is it allows data engineers and data scientists to kind of work in the same platform. That's something we see at Shipyard all the time. Is there's a huge disconnect between data engineers, data analysts, data scientists, just basic analysts, the business users. There's a huge disconnect between all of these different teams. And a lot of times the work from the data engineers is done in one platform, and the data scientist is in another platform, the data analyst is in another platform, so on and so forth. So it's really hard to kind of see the work kind of from A to Z because everything's being done in different tools. And it's hard to unify those processes because they're all done separately. Snowpark allows data scientists to kind of jump in the same tool that data engineers are using and kind of get all the work done inside of Snowflake, which is great for teams to kind of unify that work. So it's easier to kind of see that pipeline, especially at the endpoint of the pipeline. Something else to note for Snowpark is you can install your packages using Anaconda. Anaconda has most Python packages that you would expect, so that's a great thing. So it's not just what Snowflake thinks are the packages you need to use for Python. You can install whatever you want to as long as it can be installed using Anaconda. And I think the biggest thing here is that it uses the same infrastructure as your Snowflake instance. Something that we hear from customers all the time is that they just don't have the resources, whether that's time or money, to spin up another server to do, some Python work. And Snowpark kind of opens the door for if you already use Snowflake and you already have that infrastructure set up for Snowflake, use the same infrastructure and do that work inside of Snowpark as well. So I think that's great. So I wanted to kind of veer off the conversation a little bit. And the question that we get all the time, because Captain's Compass, we like to answer questions that we get from our customers. One of the questions we get all the time is, if Snowpark can do Python, is Snowpark the same thing as Shipyard? Do they do basically the same thing? And the answer to that question is pretty much no. So I want to kind of hit a few things that differentiate Snowpark and Shipyard. And one of the biggest one is data location. So inside of Snowpark, there are some ability for you to pull outside data in using their API. However, the biggest use of Snowpark is using data that's already inside of Snowflake. So if you have your data inside of Snowflake and you want to use some transformations, do some ML models, do some analysis, Snowpark's perfect for that. The data is already there. It's great. You can use Python, you can use Java, Scala, you can use SQL as well. Mix it all together and get that work done. The thing about Shipyard is that it doesn't matter where your data is. It can be inside of Snowflake. It can be anywhere else in the world. And you can use Shipyard to get that data, move it around, do transformations, run ML models, things like that. So that's one big difference is where your data is located and whether each one of the products can work with it. And another thing inside of Shipyard is we allow more processes upstream to be connected with those downstream processes as well. So I haven't seen too many people, if it's possible, I'm not sure if it is, to kind of do like extraction using Snowpark or some of those more like upstream tasks that you do inside of your data pipelines instead of the transformations and ML models. Inside of Shipyard, you can combine that extraction layer with your transformation layer, with your BI layer, with your ML layer. All those things can be combined together inside of Shipyard. Snowpark doesn't give you the ability to do all those things. You can do a lot of those things inside of Snowpark, but not all of them, which is another difference between Shipyard and Snowpark. And then, inside of Shipyard, I mentioned earlier that Snowpark uses Anaconda to install packages. Shipyard uses pip. So that is a difference. I'm not going to get into the argument whether Anaconda or pip are better or worse. That's a slippery slope that I don't want to get into. But that is a difference. And then kind of the last big question that we get a lot, and maybe kind of the prevailing question of why I wanted to cover this topic, is can you run Snowpark inside of Shipyard? The answer for that is yes, based on my testing. You definitely can. And just stay tuned. I would expect more things coming from our channels kind of in using Snowpark inside of Shipyard. It's definitely possible using their API. And again, I would just expect some content coming out soon showing how you can use Snowpark inside a Shipyard. So in this video, we kind of discussed, first off, what Snowpark is, some of the benefits that Snowpark offers, and then the differences between what Shipyard can do and what Snowpark can do. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Captain's Compass, and we'll see you in the next one.